payments in the dollar. So we've covered that. I'm more worried about the inflation in financial assets and what that means for returns and bubbles that are developing, because there's a massive amount of liquidity around, and it's being thrown around so that it's a difficult environment for those returns to be justified. I think we're building kind of a bubble. So I think inflation in financial assets and so on is an issue related to liquidity. Anyway, you think about it, what's happened is the net worth of Americans and most people in developed countries.
This is Countdown to the Open. I'm Lisa Abramowitz in for Jonathan Farrow. That was Bloomberg Live's coverage of the Qatar Economic Forum. You can watch extended coverage now at Live Go, where we see Ray Dalio talking about the threat of a bubble. We're just moments away from the start of trading, and you can see asset prices climbing higher, just as Ray Dalio was talking about, climbing despite some of the concerns about tapering, led by the riskier sectors in the market. The Russell 2000 leading the way, up nearly 1%. NASDAQ up just 0.1%. The S&P up basically 0.5%. If you flip up the board, it's been round robin when it comes to Treasury yields. They were lower heading into the U.S. session. Now they are climbing higher as people reassess what the Fed's true reaction function would be, especially given the fact that they don't like the fact that inflation expectations are going lower, as we heard from our prior guests. We are seeing crude continue to climb as Bank of America Merrill Lynch's Francisco Blanchard puts out there the potential for $100 a barrel oil. Let's head to the markets desk. Bloomberg's Abigail Doolittle joining us now.
Lisa, before going macro with that risk on tone that you were just highlighting, it is, of course, Monday, and it's a true M&A Monday. We have two movers that are absolutely soaring, starting out with Lidl, the chemicals company, up 82%. This as the Clear Lake Capital-backed Unifrax is buying the company for a little more than $62 per share for a $1.3 billion deal. We also have Raven Industries soaring, the ag equipment company being bought by CNH Industrial in a $2.1 billion deal. So there is adding to that risk on tone. Now, before taking a look at a piece of what is helping today, not helping is the crypto space, really down sharply. This is Bitcoin is just below or above, I should say, $32,000 per Bitcoin, tumbling, that volatility continuing, and of course, China back in the news, cracking down. But of course, you could talk about the parabolic uptrend that maybe it should not have happened, that those bubbles don't last. And then helping out the markets today, Lisa, one piece of it, a bit of reflation back. This is yields back up, perhaps a rethink of the hawkish interpretation of the Fed last week. We have the banks climbing as yields, again, are climbing as well, Lisa.
Thank you so much, Abigail. The big banks bouncing back, as you said, but still leading the declines this month. RBC's Gerard Cassidy recommending investors buy the dip.
We've not seen this low rate environment persist for so long, particularly on the long end of the curve, with the likelihood of inflation heating up to levels possibly we haven't seen in over 25 years. So the industry right now is grappling with an excess amount of liquidity caused by the quantitative easing by the Federal Reserve. This pullback is a great opportunity for investors to buy bank stocks.
For more, let's bring in Bloomberg's Ritika Gupta. Ritika.
Thanks, Lisa. Well, we really have seen the banks turn from your leaders to your laggards in the month of June, climbing back up a bit today. But still, in the past 2 weeks, we're down as much as 10%. This, of course, is that reflation rally lost some steam after a more hawkish Fed and some of those earnings estimates being revised lower. We had some stark warnings from the CEOs of JP Morgan and Citigroup on that trading revenue. Jamie Dimon saying it could be down as much as 38% from a year ago. But we do have some positive catalysts for that banking sector this week, with those Fed stress tests could help it move off that 100-day moving average, which we had closed around last week. Banks are expected to pass these stress tests with ease. That could mean billions of dollars going back into share buybacks and dividends. These had, of course, been capped during the pandemic year. We did see some of the restrictions lifted early 2021. The idea now that more money could go back to the shareholders has some of those analysts saying buy that dip, but risks, of course, do remain on the horizon. We have to see what happens with those trading revenues, the core lending perhaps being softer, and of course, a direction of interest rates, Lisa.
Ritika, thank you so much. A flatter yield curve is part of what's weighing on the big banks. HSBC's Steve Major expecting the 10-year to drift lower, not just lower. He wrote, quote, "The path of least resistance is to lower yields. We maintain our 1% forecast for 10-year treasuries." Joining us now, Esti Dweck of Natixis and PGIM's Greg Peters. Esti, I'd love to get your take on whether this can persist, this flattening in the yield curve that's really hammered banks that we've seen to date.
The reality is, I don't think that much has changed. I think we're seeing more of an overreaction to the dot plots. Powell walked it back, talked it back through the press conference. We're very far away from the objectives in terms of unemployment, of the labor market. As you were saying earlier, inflation expectations are now coming down and peaked about a month ago. It does look like the path of least resistance is downwards now, and we have been in something of a downtrend for yields since March. But I think we're going to probably settle in after a few days post-Fed, and we'll start to see a stabilization and not a further drop in yields.
Greg, what's your view? I've heard from a growing number of fixed income strategists that actually flatter is the more likely trajectory of the yield curve. Do you think it can persist?
I do, and we do, and that's been kind of what we've been calling for all along. It's been painful for a little bit, but we do think back-end yields have crested. I'm not suggesting that there won't be volatility. I think one of the lessons learned here over the past several trading days is that the Fed speak's just going to create volatility. At the end of the day, though, ultimately, I think the curve is flatter and yields are lower. And I think that is the trend that we'll be operating under for quite some time.
The discussion that we were having with Mike Jean earlier in the morning, I thought was fascinating. This idea that perhaps the Fed is going to try to walk back some of its rhetoric simply because longer-term inflation expectations have come down. This is exactly what they do not want to be seeing, and this is exactly what has been stemming the contraction in the yield curve. Do you agree that there is this sense, Esti, that perhaps the Fed will walk this back, allowing the yield curve to steepen once again?
Well, the reality is we didn't see that much steepening ahead of the Fed, right? We had seen yields trending down even before. We'd seen a stabilization, let's call it around 150 on the US 10-year. Real yields remain very firmly in negative territory. I'm not sure if just walking back or talking back some of this in the next few weeks is going to lead to a much steeper yield curve again. I think maybe your front end drops a bit further, but the long end had been stabilizing around these levels. And really, the hikes that are potentially penciled in by a number of governors are for 2023. That's 2 years out. So a lot of time before the yields need to adjust much further.
Greg, what do you think in terms of all the Fed speak that Abigail ran down just earlier here today, talking about what we can expect with the messaging? Do we think that there's going to be any kind of change to the rhetoric that we heard last week?
There's too much dispersion and there's too much white noise. I think market participants have to tune out the white noise. So, it doesn't matter what Bullard said, right? So, the fact that the markets reacted around that is really surprising. So I think market players need to focus on what matters, and what matters is what comes out of Powell's mouth and then Clarida's mouth. The rest is just really white noise and should be tuned out. So I think, this whole narrative around walking back, talking back is really a false one in many respects, because we shouldn't be paying attention to those governors in the first place.
All right, and this has been a serious issue as we look to the Fed speak that Jay Powell will be speaking on Tuesday. Esti, when we talk about positioning in risk assets, do you go into banks? Do you buy? Do you sell treasuries at this point? Do you buy risk?
Okay, traders, let's place stop on profit for Swiss franc. Let's move even further. The price I'm going to move to 0.92. 0.71. It will give us 500 pounds in profit. In your case, it will give us 5 pips. Okay, so please, if you decided to trade Swiss franc with us, and if you decided to execute order exactly at the point we executed, move your stop on profit. Okay, I'll speak to you later, guys.
You know, maybe the labor market improving, but I don't think that would be such a surprise to markets to get 3-4 months of very strong non-farm payrolls. We've been expecting them. We know that a number of the reasons why it hasn't happened should be dissipating over the next few months. But I do think that at this point, from an equity market, from a risk asset perspective, it is more of a pause in the move rather than the end of the reflation trade.
Greg, considering the fact that you do think that the yield curve is going to flatten, is that a sign of risk to high yield debt, to the riskier credit? Is it a sign that perhaps the slowdown could start to affect the incredible cash flow that we've seen for some of these more speculative companies?
I think it's too early. So that's always a risk. And the yield curve has always been a measure, a forward-looking measure of economic slowdown. But I think what's unique about this cycle is that you look at valuations writ large versus where we are in the economic cycle. Valuations are very much late cycle, where fundamentals are early to mid-cycle. So I still think there's room to run in risk assets, high-yield bonds as well. But clearly, the binding constraint as we look forward is less the economic activity and more on the valuation front. I just think we have some more room to run here and some more time.
Esti Dweck, Greg Peters, thank you so much. Right now, let's head back to the Qatar Economic Forum.
Which can be delivered. What do you think is the right answer for infrastructure at this point for the United States?
Well, I think infrastructure is something that's very important. Actually, this is something that President Trump campaigned on as well, and we wanted to get done. We ended up having a lot of other priorities, so we had difficulty passing this. But just as last year, both parties came together to pass the CARES Act, I would encourage the parties to come together, something that looks like around $1 trillion, as I know what the bipartisan group has been working on. And I think that can have a real positive impact on the economy. So I'm a big fan of bipartisan work in that area. And I would be very careful, particularly as we grow the economy and people are trying to get back to work and small businesses are opening up, what could be significant tax increases across the board.
Well, and the tax increases really is the rub, isn't it? Because watching from the outside, at least, with the various meetings that President Trump had up at the White House, the infrastructure weeks that were had, it always got down to, I think, how do you pay for it? Not just how big is it, but how do you pay for it? Is it essential that you not raise income taxes in any way, shape, or form, corporate or individual, in order to make the infrastructure work?
I think it can be done. There's a lot of money left from the pandemic funds last year. We passed over $6 trillion of funds. There's still significant money that hasn't been used. I believe that can be recycled. And I think the bipartisan group can look for across the board. There may be some pay-fors that don't have significant impact on the economy.
Is that use taxes?
Excuse me?
Would that be use taxes, for example? That's one of the things being suggested is pay for. That's not income tax, but use tax.
I'm not going to comment on the specifics of whether it's gas taxes or other, because I'm going to let the bipartisan group figure that out. Almost by definition, it's the areas that people can agree on. But I'm hopeful that that will get done. I think it's been moving in the right direction, and I'm hopeful.
So, Mr. Secretary, give us, if you can, a rough sensitivity analysis on the question of the trend line growth, because you said it depends critically on investment in things like infrastructure and tax policy, which seem to be linked up. What's the upper level? What's the lower level, depending on what they do there? What do you expect in terms of trend line growth for the United States over the next 5 years?
Well, I can't comment on 5 years, but I would say clearly in the foreseeable future, I mean, we could easily see 6 to 8% growth. I think the other area, and the previous panel commented on this, is the risk of inflation and how that plays out. Now, inflation is good for certain parts of the economy and very bad for other parts of the economy. So I do worry, as Larry Summers and others have said, that the chances are higher as opposed to lower, that this is ongoing inflation and that the Fed will need to adjust for that. I think in the interim, there'll be businesses that are growth businesses, high margin businesses with consumer spending that will do very well with higher inflation, and businesses with lower margins and high costs of labor are going to be concerned. So I think the inflation outlook is something that's going to need to be managed very carefully.
Well, let's talk about managing it carefully, because it appears that the Fed is coming around to the view that at least has to be concerned about inflation. That's what we heard from the Fed after the FOMC meeting. We heard Chair Jay Powell say we're paying attention now to inflation, even though they didn't take specific action. Do you think that what the Fed is doing, basically in indicating down the road they're going to have to tighten some, do you think that that's going to be enough to rein in the danger of inflation?
Well, I have a lot of confidence in Chair Powell, and we worked obviously very closely over the last several years. Clearly, what the Fed did last year during the pandemic really helped, and it was critical. So there's no question that the Fed needs to go into a period of normalizing rates and normalizing the portfolio. And I think the question is really how quickly they do that and how they do that in an effort to control inflation. I think the issue is that the Fed is being cautious. The Fed models, the Treasury models, economic models really are not very good at predicting, given the vast amount of fiscal and monetary response we had over the last year. So I think this is something that needs to be watched very carefully. And I do think the markets are underestimating this risk.
Well, it does raise the broader question, at least for me, of how much of the growth we're seeing right now, because as you say, Mr. Secretary, we're going to see some robust growth this year in all likelihood. How much of that is because of the fiscal and monetary support as opposed to the underlying strength of the economy?
Well, I think a large part of that is going to be the fiscal and monetary that allowed for the reopening of the economy. So again, I just want to put this in perspective. Over a year ago, I never thought I'd be in a period of time sitting in an Oval Office talking about shutting down travel to Europe, talking about shutting down the entire economy. So there's no question that now that it's reopened, and now that, at least in the US, there's vast vaccine distribution, you're seeing businesses come back very strong. And I believe in particular the travel, entertainment, leisure business, people like these videos, but people want to get back out and travel and see people.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. You talked about some of the things that you did in the Trump administration, you and President Trump did, to really spur growth. And it certainly included tax cuts as well as regulatory reform. On the other hand, President Trump from the beginning took a very strong line with China, which, by the way, President Biden seems to be following up on. Looking back at it now, did you leave some growth on the table because of the need to be tough on China?
Well, I can't specifically say whether we did or whether we didn't. What I will say is that China is the second largest economy in the world. It has a large population, 1.3 billion. It's both the biggest opportunity and the biggest threat, with a large growing middle class. And the purpose of the tariffs were really to create a level playing field. So the issues that we were dealing with were the same issues that my predecessors were dealing with, Hank Paulson and others. And there's no question that the tariffs had the desired impact of getting China to the negotiating table. We made a lot of progress on the phase one trade deal. I would encourage the Biden administration to continue that work and try to have China make more reforms on trade and play by the global rules. I think that's important for their economy and very important for the rest of the world economy as well.
As the Biden administration does apparently turn from Europe to Asia, and particularly China, is it a zero-sum game? I mean, in the sense that in order to really get China to the bargaining table and get real concessions, you have to run the risk of giving up some growth.
Well, I don't think it's a zero-sum game. China, they were at the bargaining table. We made significant progress. I would encourage people to get back to the bargaining table, and let's see if they can get a phase two deal done. That's really the purpose. This was about protecting intellectual property, protecting fair and free trade, and having two-way trade. A major component, we believed, of the deficit was that our companies didn't have the same opportunities to participate in China as their companies had in the U.S.
And finally, Mr. Secretary, I really want to turn to what you're doing now, because I understand you were putting together a fund for investment that involves sort of, if I can put it this way, a public-private partnership in a sense, public-government experience with private investment. Tell me what you're doing.
Well, David, I'm very focused on the work that I did over the last 4 years, both on national security and regulatory areas. Very focused on technology such as cybersecurity and data privacy. I think as we've seen in recent events, these are very important areas of national security and economic security. And also in fintech and financials, where we see really the U.S. systems continuing to advance significantly.
So some of the issues we've seen, for example, with some of the ransomware attacks, are real challenges. Do you see investment opportunities there, and what do those investment opportunities look like?
Well, David, when I was at Treasury, I was responsible for cybersecurity for all of the financial services industry, as well as for the IRS, which is obviously a very large holder. And we did a lot of work on modernization. We did a lot of preparation. The financial services industry has invested significant amounts of money in these areas. I think other areas of the U.S. economy need to continue to invest as well. And this is going to be an ongoing issue that's not a 1 or 2 year issue, but in my opinion, a 10-year issue.
Let me ask you something that I know you know a lot about, and that's blockchain, and for that matter, cryptocurrency. Is that a help or a hindrance in dealing with some of the security issues we have?
Well, I think the underlying technology of blockchain has huge potential, particularly for things like real-time payment processing, cross-border, using stable coins. My views, and we did a lot of work at Treasury on this on an interagency basis. We put out regulations last year around making sure that if you want to buy cryptocurrencies, that it has to be transparent. And I believe that many of those industries should be in the regulated world. They should follow the same BSA, the Bank Secrecy Act requirements, the Know Your Customer requirements, and these shouldn't be the equivalent of secret Swiss-numbered bank accounts. So as long as we do a lot of work in that...
That was Bloomberg Live's coverage of the Qatar Economic Forum. You can watch extended coverage now at Live Go. Greg Peters and Esty Dweck still with us. Esty, I do want to go to this idea of the dollar. And as we've heard a number of the people on these panels, in particular Ray Dalio, we were hearing that the dollar is poised to steadily weaken due to how much debt has been incurred and due to some of the Fed bond buying. Do you agree with that?
I don't think that the amount of debt is really the market's concern at this point. I think the focus is much more on reopening, on what growth is going to look like, what the Fed is going to look like. We've interestingly seen basically something of a double bottom in the dollar index that held. So we have a bit of a floor now. It doesn't mean the dollar strengthens a lot from here. And again, I think that a lot of the market reactions we've seen since Wednesday have been overreaction, and the dollar is one of them. I just don't think that the debt dynamics today are going to be enough to weaken the dollar, where the U.S. economy is growing faster. There's more fiscal impetus, and we'll see how much Biden manages for infrastructure. And of course, you now have a bit of a carry advantage against a number of currencies. Some downside potential for the dollar, but I think it will prove to be relatively limited.
All right. Well, meanwhile, infrastructure talks are stalling on Capitol Hill. Negotiations resuming this week. For more, Bloomberg's Emily Wilkins joins us from D.C. There's a question, Emily, of how much progress is being made with the bipartisan support for the $579 billion bill, seeming to gain some steam here.
I mean, look, the fact that they have got 10 Senate Republicans, technically 11 Senate Republicans on board is a big deal here, because that means that the bill can go through the normal process. They don't need to worry about reconciliation, and President Biden can claim a bipartisan victory. However, they're still stuck on how to pay for this. Republicans have put forward indexing a gas tax. That's actually something we've seen some Democrats in the Senate open to, but President Biden has said no way. He's been very adamant about not raising taxes on those Americans who make less than $400,000. And so you have this question of exactly how things need to be paid for. Yeah. And you have another deadline coming up, because after this week, the House and the Senate both recess for a few weeks for the July 4th.
All right. Thank you so much, Emily. Greg, there is a question here about whether we may see a bigger surprise to markets for a tax rate hike, or perhaps to a bigger or smaller than expected infrastructure plan. In other words, should we be looking more to the taxes or more to the headline number and the potential growth that could stem from fiscal spending?
I'm focused more on the fiscal part. I think that's the real potential game changer, if you would. It seems like it's a very popular bill as well. I think infrastructure is something that's been talked about for, seems like decades at this point. There's a very big multiplier effect relative to maybe some other spending that happens at the federal level. So I look to the fiscal side as the real key here, and much more focus on that and the potential for growth relative to the tax side at this point in time. But at some point, it does have to be paid back. I'm just not convinced that that is the narrative today. I think that's unfortunately a narrative for future generations.
There is a question of what the Fed exactly means, and we're getting a host of Fed speak, including the Fed's Kaplan saying that the dot plot reflects dramatically improved outlook, including 3.4% inflation this year. Esty, how much is the fiscal spending a part of that? How much are we already pricing in some sort of substantial package getting passed in Washington, D.C.?
Not so much, I don't think. When you look at Biden's numbers, and again, we don't know how much he'll achieve, but even assuming he manages to get $2 trillion of infrastructure, if you put that over 10 years and you look back, that's about 1% of U.S. GDP per year. These are not, game-changing numbers. It's great on sentiment. It's a good headline. If he does manage a bipartisan deal, that's another win. But the reality is, from a pure growth perspective, one, it takes time. You have to find the right places to invest, and it is going to be diluted over a number of years. So it is positive, but I think at this point, if you're looking at the outlook, this is a lot more about reopening, the economy is getting back on track, pent-up demand, and that growth continuing to filter through because we haven't priced in all of the reopening yet.
Greg, before we let you go, just real quickly here, do you think the dollar is going to strengthen from here or weaken?
I think the trend is towards strengthening, not weakening. So I disagree with Ray Dalio's thesis. I think shorting the dollar over the long term is typically a bad endeavor.
All right, I think a lot of people actually do agree with you. Greg Peters, Esty Dweck, both of you, thank you so much for being with us and for your patience as we listened in to the Qatar Economic Forum panel. This was Countdown to the Open. We see right now in the markets a kind of interesting dynamic emerging as you see the NASDAQ sort of toggling between gains and losses, finally getting back up into the green. The S&P up 0.7%. If you look at the Russell 2000, though, continuing to lead the way, perhaps not dead yet is the reflation trade. People trying to pile back in, with Fed officials, including Jim Bullard, saying that the U.S. is in a stronger position on reopening now than expected, and we have to be ready for the idea of upside inflation risks, basically doubling down on this idea that the reason why they're bringing forward the rate hiking is because the U.S. economy looks so good. It is not bearish on the U.S. economy or inflation. This was Countdown to the Open from New York. This is Bloomberg.
We're now in the early stages of a sustainability revolution.
The battery problem may
be the biggest unsolved problem in all of technology.
Every time the United States has done great transformative things, there's been a partnership between government and the private sector.
With a willing partner to ensure competitiveness and draw in investment in the United States, Canada's going to be able to be even more ambitious.
The objective for Glasgow, first and foremost, is to keep that 1.5 degree temperature rise within reach.
The train has left the station. Investors care about it. People who work inside of corporate America care about these issues. And certainly we see that with just the broader community.
There's not enough tax in the world for private sector to pay for all of this. It's going to have to be a public-private partnership.
Months after Hurricane Maria, Puerto Rico is still in peril. Huge swaths of the island are still without power, running water, or access to medical care. Experts estimate that it will take years before these services are restored island-wide. Much of the blame has been placed on FEMA for a slow response in comparison to recent disasters on the mainland. But recovery from a disaster of this complexity and scale has proven more challenging than anyone anticipated. And filling the gaps between an overextended public sector and a suffering populace falls on the private citizens. Robert Anderson is a Puerto Rico resident of 4 years.
The eye of the storm came in south of El Yunque, swept up towards San Juan, and out to Arecibo. Everything on the right-hand side is what we call the dirty side of the storm.
This isn't his first time in a disaster zone. With a military and telecom background, Anderson worked on repairing damaged cell phone towers in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. Some might be tempted to label him a disaster capitalist, seeking lucrative government contracts for his expertise. But as Anderson finds himself in the middle of a humanitarian crisis, he and his associates are developing a variety of pro bono recovery projects that target the island's hardest hit areas.
I see two Puerto Ricos. We're here in San Juan. They have telecommunications restored. They may or may not have power, but basic services are in place. They're able to get food. They're able to buy things. They're surviving. And when you look outside of the San Juan area, you can go 15 minutes from here and find areas that are devastated. I'm working on the devastated side.
Today, he's put together a boots-on-the-ground mission to provide medical care to some of the island's most isolated and vulnerable residents. Steve Berenbaum is one of Anderson's business associates. He offered an extra car and a set of hands.
So we received an initial report from a nurse that was out in the area. We're headed to the northeast region of Utuado for some people that are in need of urgent medical assistance.
Dr. Sally Priester is a physician from San Juan. She filled a van with medical supplies at her own expense and brought along a team of nurses. Google Maps estimated our first destination to be a 90-minute drive. But it didn't account for obstacles like this. Our first stop was the home of an 82-year-old blind Vietnam veteran. His roof was blown off by the storm, and he's been living alone in a back shed for nearly 2 months.
His cane actually got broken in the storm, so he's limited mobility. He has a number of medical ailments. Dr. Priester's having a look at him. We called the VA. They're going to get him set up with what he needs, get him stabilized so he can then be transported either to an evacuation center or off the island. It's when the chain gets broken, when those families that are connected to them leave the island or take off, these guys get left at the end of the road, and it's tough.
FEMA was not officially part of Robert's team, and their arrival caught everyone by surprise. Their job here was to survey and report back to their superiors, and did not come with medical aid of any kind.
People think that FEMA is there to hand out bottles of water. It's not what they do. FEMA has a role to play. They have a very specific role. They bring in ships, they bring in airplanes, they bring in tractor trailers with pallets of things. But they're a big machine, and there's gaps in that thing. And you're seeing one of the gaps here, and we help fill that role. These guys are in a bad situation before, and now they're struggling for real basic things. One of the risks that you run is people going from fear to hopelessness. Those are the folks that we're trying to reach.
And how are they reached? How are they even found?
Word of mouth, mostly.
And what's your role in all this?
Ghost in the machine. I'm lucky enough to be able to communicate with folks in FEMA, the state of Puerto Rico.
For a ghost, Robert makes his presence well known. Not only was he the de facto leader of the mission, now with FEMA in tow, he created his own maps to survey storm damage.
So we're right here.
And delivered them to FEMA HQ free of charge.
I have pretty good reach.
Perhaps that's how he managed to earn himself a coveted FEMA badge without actually working for them. And it's these relationships that allow him to operate more efficiently than an NGO or a government agency.
We're able to resolve problems at a different level.
Our next stop was on a mountaintop, a family of 11 struggling to care for their special needs brother in what was left of their house.
Probably we are the first health team to come and visit this family.
Muy bien, todo muy bien.
The patient has Down syndrome. He's all day in bed. The difficulty with this is the patient cannot be alone. The most important thing is that you need to take care of the chronic disease besides disability, because they have been not going to a doctor, and no doctor has come in here yet.
So we need a refill of this medication.
After maybe 54 days, it's not getting better. And the only way that you can be able to see that is coming to the ground, drive, and see the people and talk to the people.
You can see San Juan from here, but you can't get there. It's like the Emerald City.
On this stop, we caught word that a man living alone at the edge of the jungle was in need of care.
So we decided to take a little detour, come up here and check out and see what's going on. One of the challenges is to find those people that are at the end of these roads that need help.
¿Pero por qué estás solo? ¿Por qué estás por acá tan solo? I'm asking about why he's alone right here. He said things of life happens. Yeah, I'm here by myself. So ¿dónde vive acá? En la parte de... This is not a job. To do this, you need to have passion for what you can do. You're not going to get paid.
It's said in disaster response and emergency response that the real first responders are your neighbors. You don't need to wait for a lucrative FEMA contract to go out and do good and to help the community.
In the end, do you feel like you're making a difference?
Lives you touch and people that you can affect. I don't really think about it in those terms.
But why do you do it?
It helps me sleep at night. I think it's as much for the people that are going out to help and do things as it is for the people that you affect.
Whether out of altruism, or the lure of a paid gig, or some mixture of the two, Anderson hopes to stay here to help shape Puerto Rico's future.
Puerto Rico's essentially been a colony for 400 years. It was treated poorly by the Spanish. It was not treated well by the United States when they first got here. Puerto Rico can continue in the way that it's always been, or Puerto Rico can rebuild itself like nothing that's ever been. And we have to do everything we can to make that real. That's the bottom line.
When I met him first online, I found him to be really sweet. I think I was the one who was talking for an hour. He was just listening.
When we met, I saw her. She was beautiful, intelligent, and kind, which was, something that I was looking for.
Anshu and Sumit are one of about 12 million couples that get married in India every year. Unlike their parents' generation, they're not from two close villages, but from two cities on opposite sides of the country. And their love didn't start through community matchmaking, marriage brokers, or classified ads in newspapers, but began online.
So we met through jeevansathi.com. So it's basically an online portal where we have detailed profile of different grooms and brides.
It makes a lot of remote profiles who are located in distant areas more accessible.
Thanks to growing internet and smartphone usage, matrimony websites and apps in India are starting to disrupt the matchmaking industry. More and more people are finding their partners at the click of a mouse. jeevansathi.com, where Anshu and Sumit met, is one of the biggest players. Young Indians looking for love set up profiles including their caste and horoscope, but their criteria for choosing spouses appears to be changing.
We have seen the shift from, traditional caste community conservative parameters to something like which is more focused on education, employment.
Anshu and Sumit's marriage was initiated by their parents, but modern Indian couples like them have more input than previous generations.
We looked up to them to agree for the proposal, but it was primarily our decision that we wanted to be with each other.
So what's the emoji like you use the most to send to each other?
There's a bear, which basically we use for indicating a hug.
Yeah, that's our language basically. Bear icon for a hug.
Time flies when you're in love, and just 1.5 months after they first met online, the couple got engaged. They decided to hold their wedding less than 3 months later. But planning a traditional Hindu wedding on such short notice is no easy task. The massive event usually lasts 3 days, has various ceremonies and celebrations, and involves the entire two families and hundreds of guests. Luckily, there are websites and apps for that.
We searched online, we got in touch with Wedding Brigade, and they helped us finalize the venue. And it makes the search faster and efficient.
Startups like the Wedding Brigade are challenging traditional wedding planners in this $50 billion industry. It provides various services from booking banquet venues to buying wedding gowns. The website makes money by charging commission from vendors.
People don't want to be limited to what is available around them. They want to know the entire range of options available before making a decision. And now it's easy to find almost everything on one portal.
Anshu and Sumit are officially married in a ritual that has gone on for thousands of years, but their love started in a very new way. Technologies might be changing the way couples meet, date, and get married in India, but they're definitely not changing everything.
The technology was only the first level help that we could get to find each other. Everything else was like very humanly and emotions and feelings based.
Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren has become a symbol of everything the Republican Party stands against.
Everyone gets a right to basic health care. We need strong oversight of these banks.
A legal scholar and a consumer advocate turned politician, Warren has branded herself as a champion of the working class and made a career out of standing up to big business. While rumors of a 2020 presidency bid remain just that,
I'm not running for president.
her Senate seat is up for re-election in 2018, and Republicans are already pumping millions into super PACs to defeat her. This is the story of how a law professor and politician came to be seen as the biggest threat to Republican values and the greatest hope for progressive America. Elizabeth Warren was born Elizabeth Ann Herron, the youngest of 3 siblings, on June 22, 1949 in Oklahoma City to middle-class parents. After waiting tables to help her family pay the bills, Warren became a star on the high school debate team.
Okay, guys, let's move further. Let's move further our stop and profit for Swiss franc, and I'm going to move to 0.92.41. Okay, just right here. Okay, it will give us even more profit. Okay, please move your stop and profit to this position, and let's see what's going to happen next. Stay with me.
Republican, actually.
That's Stephen Dennis.
I'm a Senate reporter for Bloomberg. Around the time that Elizabeth Warren switched parties, she became a fierce opponent of a Republican drive to make it much harder to file for bankruptcy. She fought that for a decade. It ended up passing anyways.
While her efforts ultimately failed, her warning calls were heard in 2008.
We're in the midst of a serious financial crisis. Our entire economy is in danger, and without immediate action by Congress, America could slip into a financial panic, and a distressing scenario would unfold.
Professor Warren was tapped to help with oversight in the government bailout.
She would excoriate bankers and their bonuses and their practices.
Why should the U.S. taxpayer alone carry Citi?
She proposed a series of tough regulations, which became the basis for much of the Dodd-Frank financial law that we have today. That sort of catapulted her to national stardom, particularly among the progressive left.
Encouraged by her newfound notoriety, Warren declared her bid for the U.S. Senate on September 14, 2011. During the race, her opponent Scott Brown tried to derail Warren by accusing her of falsely claiming Native American heritage, a controversy that earned her the nickname Pocahontas. Nevertheless, she was victorious and won the Senate seat by a comfortable margin. She used her new tenure to challenge everyone, from banking regulators and Treasury officials to members of Wall Street and Congress.
I'm really concerned that too big to fail has become too big for trial. We need tough new laws to hold corporate executives personally accountable. No one should be above the law.
She called for Wells Fargo CEO John Stumpf to resign for fraud, introduced the Bank on Student Loans Fairness Act, and reintroduced the 21st Century Glass-Steagall Act. In 2016, after staying silent during the Democratic primary battle, Warren finally endorsed Hillary Clinton and had some harsh words for candidate Trump.
Donald Trump is a loud, nasty, thin-skinned fraud who has never risked anything for anyone, and that is just one of the many reasons he will never be president of the United States.
But she was wrong.
The forgotten men and women of our country will be forgotten no longer.
Warren wasted no time resisting Trump's agenda.
Have you ever managed or overseen a $1 trillion loan program?
I have not.
How about a $1 billion loan program?
I have not.
Okay.
In the Donald Trump era, Elizabeth Warren has been playing defense and trying to prevent Donald Trump and his cabinet appointees from rolling back protections that she helped enact.
Warren actually found herself rebuked by Mitch McConnell for reading a letter by Coretta Scott King about Jeff Sessions' record on racism during his confirmation.
She was warned. She was given an explanation. Nevertheless, she persisted.
That moment became something that's on T-shirts, bumper stickers, slogans, and that really galvanized a lot of support for her. It's been very hard for Republicans to get much of anything done this year, and that's at least in part to this resistance movement that Elizabeth Warren has helped champion.
We are here to fight back.
Enough of Elizabeth Warren. Like you.
Millions of dollars are being funneled to defeat Warren in the midterm elections in 2018. But it's the rumors of a 2020 presidential bid that has further prompted powerful donors to fund her opposition, often using the same playbook of constant and ruthless ad campaigns that many believe helped Trump win in 2016. It's anyone's guess if she will endure what Hillary could not.
You know, the question for Elizabeth Warren is whether she can go from being a liberal firebrand to somebody who can regularly get 60 votes for initiatives in the Senate and 218 in the House and drive an agenda, and whether she can bring together coalitions for political victories. That's the challenge, and we'll see what happens.
Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, has made some powerful opponents.
He doesn't know me, never met me, doesn't know what I'm all about. I think they're very rude statements, and frankly, tell him I will remember those statements.
My message to Donald Trump and his team is that, your views of Islam are ignorant.
He's the first Muslim mayor of a major Western capital and proud of it. This is how Sadiq Khan went from the son of Pakistani immigrants to a lawyer, lawmaker, and now the mayor of London. Khan's parents emigrated from Pakistan. His father was a bus driver, his mother a stay-at-home seamstress. The 10-strong Khan family squeezed into a 3-bedroom flat in South London. He wanted to be a dentist, but TV in the 1980s convinced him otherwise.
Objection!
LA law with its swagger and ill-fitting suits caught Khan's eye. He graduated in 1991 with a degree in law from North London University and joined a human rights firm. Khan worked a number of high-profile cases, often clashing with London's Metropolitan Police Force. But he had bigger political ambitions.
This is what being a new MP is like, squatting on a bench in the absence of an office, dealing with letters from constituents.
Reports are just coming in of an explosion here in London.
And there's just explosions, and then it was just smoke everywhere.
Everyone's just asking what's happened.
Only 2 months after Khan entered the Commons as a Member of Parliament, London was attacked by Islamist extremists.
That day will stay with me for the rest of my life.
He spoke out against the attacks both as a London MP and as a Muslim.
He has been very clear about his opposition to violence, opposition to terrorism, and has set out to make the case for a more open and peaceful Islam.
That's Thomas Penny, one of Bloomberg's Westminster correspondents.
Here is a man who is a Muslim, and he is standing up and being open and straightforward and being clear that the problem here is not Islam, but it's Islamic extremism.
In 2015, a decade after the attacks, Khan ran for mayor of London, and his faith was back in the headlines. His opponent, Zach Goldsmith, trying to link Khan to radical Islam.
The debate got again personal and nasty. The Goldsmith camp has called Khan extreme and accused him of associating with, quote, those who seek to do our police and capital harm.
It's a pattern of behaviour.
Even the former Prime Minister David Cameron repeated the allegations.
He shared a platform with Sajil Shahid, the man who trained the ringleader of the 7/7 attacks and accused the United States of bringing 9/11 on themselves.
But the smears didn't stick.
Zach Goldsmith ran a very negative campaign that was based on what people knew was a lie.
This election was not without controversy. And I'm so proud that London has today chosen hope over fear and unity over division.
After taking the mayor's office with a comfortable majority, Khan has brought a business-like efficiency to the role, scrapping expensive vanity projects like the Garden Bridge and the new Routemaster buses, which cost £350,000 each. The former lawyer who used to fight the police in court is now praised for his close relationship with them.
I was talking to a very senior police officer in the Metropolitan Police who said there was a sea change when he went into City Hall, and the police were saying how much they welcomed this because they knew where they stood and it was more straightforward to work with. So he works like a lawyer, he works like a government minister.
Khan's kept his faith at the fore. He's an outspoken voice for moderate Muslims across the world.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States.
Now, by giving the impression that Islam and the West are incompatible, you're playing into the hands of the extremists.
The ongoing spat between Khan and US President Donald Trump escalated when Trump went after Khan, misquoting him on Twitter just hours after the terrorist attacks of June 3rd, 2017. Khan's now one of the most prominent Labour politicians in the UK. In fact, a recent poll of Londoners found Khan was more trusted to keep the country safe from terrorism than the Prime Minister or the Labour leader. His story of going from the son of an immigrant bus driver to the mayor of one of the greatest cities in the world plays well with Londoners. But can he appeal to the rest of the nation? Has Khan got his eye on the top job? And is the UK ready for a Muslim Prime Minister?
What does it take to change the world? A big army? A cure to a pandemic? A revolution? All of these take either a lot of people, thousands of hours, or massive amounts of space. But for Julian Assange, all he needs is one room, an internet connection, and the world will listen. Assange is located here, and more specifically, right here. And from that location, he's posted government secrets, classified documents, and leaked emails from some of the world's most powerful people. And in doing so, has been labeled a hero, a villain, a nihilist, and everything in between. This is how an Australian programmer sequestered in the Ecuadorian embassy in London became one of the most influential and notorious people in the world. Born in 1971 in Townsville, Australia, Assange has always been on the move. Living in over 30 homes by the time he was in his mid-teens, Assange, along with his mother and half-brother, finally settled down in Melbourne. His introduction to hacking started at 16 when he was given a Commodore 64, which he attached to a modem. He attended the University of Melbourne, where he studied programming, physics, and mathematics. He never graduated, but that doesn't mean he didn't get an education. By 1991, Assange hacked into the Pentagon, U.S. Navy, and other branches of the U.S. government. In 1996, he was caught by the Australian Federal Police and charged with over 30 counts of hacking and computer-related crimes. He didn't get any jail time, but he was fined $2,100.
I think the first taste of what would come later was the hacking that he did as a young programmer, and that really sort of foreshadowed a healthy skepticism of the use and abuse of technology by governments.
That's Vernon Silver.
I'm a reporter for Bloomberg's investigations team.
Assange's youth as a hacker laid the foundation for him to start WikiLeaks in 2006. But what is WikiLeaks? It's a website that posts unfiltered, usually classified documents. What separates it from every other media outlet is that they have no editorial hierarchy. With a publication like the New York Times, information comes in, they take that information, package it, then disseminate it for the public to see. WikiLeaks, however, cuts out the middleman.
WikiLeaks gathers information, most of it given to them anonymously. So what they're doing is really very simple. They get the information in one end from who gives it to them and out the other with sometimes minimal interference. Julian Assange is the leader of that, the mastermind, the creator, and really, because he thinks of it as a journalistic enterprise, the editor-in-chief.
But every story starts with a source, and Assange has some unconventional sources.
Julian Assange does not hack as far as we know. He is the recipient of people who are either insiders who give him secret documents or hacked emails from a foreign power.
That's Eli Lake.
I am a columnist for Bloomberg.
And there was no source bigger for Assange than Chelsea Manning, who used to be known as U.S. soldier Bradley Manning. In 2010, Manning provided Assange and WikiLeaks with hundreds of thousands of leaked government documents. WikiLeaks quietly began releasing the documents in February of 2010, then made big headlines in April by posting what is now known as the Collateral murder video.
Come on, fire!
It was a vivid, graphic video. It changed the debate on the Iraq War, and importantly, it put WikiLeaks on the map when they put it online, and they couldn't be ignored at that point.
And those leaks were just the beginning. They went on to post more than 90,000 leaked documents known as the Afghan war logs, 390,000 documents known as the Iraq war logs, and 250,000 private messages between diplomats called cables in what is now known as Cablegate. These leaks were met with very real ethical questions.
The problem with publishing those cables was that a number of confidential sources for U.S. diplomats who faced real danger when their names were exposed.
Then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton drove the point home that
every country, including the United States, must be able to have candid conversations about the people and nations with whom they deal.
Shortly after Cablegate, the Swedish government issued an arrest warrant for Assange on allegations of rape and molestation. He claimed the allegations were fabricated to get him extradited to the United States, a claim the U.S. government denied. Either way, Assange's next move was
to seek refuge in the Ecuadorian embassy, which really was the beginning of the new chapter in his life and what we're dealing with now, which is him being stuck in London.
What was supposed to be an office in an embassy is now Assange's self-imposed prison to this very day. But that doesn't mean he's slowed down. Since being trapped in the embassy, WikiLeaks has released files about Guantanamo Bay prisoners, Syrian political figures, and the draft to the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And then came the 2016 U.S. election.
Thousands of leaked emails showed Democratic Party officials possibly plotting against Bernie Sanders in his race against Hillary Clinton.
Over the course of 68 days, WikiLeaks released 20,000 confidential Democratic National Committee emails. In terms of the presidential race, if you look right here, when Assange released the first batch of emails, Trump actually takes his first lead against Clinton.
I think we've had enough of the Clintons, in all fairness. Don't you think?
Once WikiLeaks started exposing secrets of the Democratic Party, Julian Assange became a hero to many on the right. Public opinion kind of flip-flopped.
WikiLeaks.
From the emails, we now know Hillary Clinton's campaign manager makes risotto, and also how the DNC squashed Bernie Sanders' campaign. One thing we don't know is who gave Assange the stolen emails in the first place.
Many leading Democrats say they suspect it was the Russians. They released an analysis from a private cybersecurity firm that had said it was the Russians.
But Assange claims
our source is not the Russian government, and it is not a state party.
So this is where we stand today. The public still doesn't know who provided the emails to WikiLeaks. Meanwhile, Assange is still running WikiLeaks and still releasing documents. In March 2017, he started publishing documents from the CIA's Center for Cyber Intelligence called Vault 7.
The CIA, the agency charged with finding and keeping our top secrets, can't keep its own secrets.
As long as Assange has a connection to the world, no government secret will be too far from exposure.
Julian Assange is still in the embassy. Maybe he'll leave, maybe he won't. Kind of regardless, his work has been done. He's changed the way people think about their governments, about their own secrets, about their own hackability, and really the world has changed because of him.
When it debuted, the 4G wireless we have today allowed people for the first time to hit the road and explore unknown places with only a smartphone for directions. When 5G arrives, it could enable driverless cars to take us there as well. 5G stands for fifth generation mobile networks or wireless systems. It's insanely fast and can accommodate a lot more connected devices. But the reason it's being called revolutionary is because 5G will allow connected devices to speak to each other as well as people.
Right now we're living in a world where really it's a one-way experience.
That's Bloomberg tech reporter Ian King.
The network talks to your phone, you look at your phone and access data, then you send something back to the network. What we're being told about 5G is that really for the first time we're going to see machines communicating with each other over mobile networks in a meaningful way.
5G could end up being 100 times faster than what we have now, with speeds that could reach 20 gigabits per second. In plain English, that means downloading a full-length HD movie in seconds. 5G will also increase total bandwidth, which we will need in order to accommodate the growing Internet of Things. We're talking about the class of devices like internet-connected refrigerators, thermostats, dog collars, but 5G will enable many, many more.
Things like your utility network, factories, where machines are just sat there not connected at all. Suddenly they're all going to be connected. Suddenly we're going to be able to have real-time monitoring. Other things like cars, like utility poles, like your light, the light poles.
But perhaps the biggest advance will be a huge reduction in communication lag time, known as latency. A network of driverless cars will need the speed of 5G to ping each other multiple times per second to avoid collisions. Near instantaneous data transfers could allow doctors to perform surgery remotely with a robotic scalpel. So how will all this work? First, you need to improve network density.
And that's just a fancy word for saying you put more towers out there. What we're being told is that's not actually the case with 5G.
The idea is 5G will not only use the existing mobile spectrum, but also tap into higher frequencies called millimeter waves. Millimeter waves can carry more data, but only travel short distances. This may mean you'll see a lot more of these base stations around town. And the new towers may have as many as 100 antenna ports, compared to about a dozen on 4G cell towers. So when will we get 5G? Getting 5G ready is expected to cost providers $275 billion over 7 years in the US alone. Look for the first 5G service to pop up in big cities sometime in 2019.
People think of Vladimir Putin, they think of capital P, power. And that's exactly the impression he creates. Whether it's physical power, firing different weapons, riding in various James Bond-esque modes of transportation, or tossing hapless opponents in judo. Or political power, ruling his own country with an iron fist, crushing his political opposition, or, most recently, being accused of meddling in foreign elections for his own benefit. This is how Vladimir Putin went from a poor, tough kid in Leningrad to a KGB spy to the very symbol of modern Russia. Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin was born in 1952 in Leningrad, which is now St. Petersburg. His father was a factory foreman and his mother a homemaker. It is widely said that Putin's public-facing tough guy persona can be traced back to him getting into fights when he was younger, which paved the way for him to take up judo. After getting a law degree from Leningrad State University, Putin joined the KGB Foreign Intelligence Service. He spent 16 years in the KGB. When Putin returned to Russia, he began his political career.
He went to work for Anatoly Sobchak, who was then the mayor of St. Petersburg.
That's Leonid Bershidsky.
I'm a columnist at Bloomberg View.
Putin thrived in Sobchak's administration because
he was sort of considered pretty efficient city official at that time. He was very loyal to Sobchak.
So loyal and efficient that
he was noticed by Yeltsin's close circle.
And those people soon brought Putin over to Moscow to work in Yeltsin's administration, where he quickly climbed the political ladder.
Then, of course, he was promoted to Prime Minister of Russia.
That's Dmitry Trenin.
I am currently director of the Carnegie Moscow Center.
Around this time, Yeltsin and the people around him, the so-called family, decided that Putin would become Yeltsin's successor. And then this happened. The apartment bombings were carried out in 3 Russian cities, killing 293 people and injuring more than 1,000. Putin immediately accused Chechen separatists for the bombings and followed it up with action.
He was credited with having a very successful military campaign against the terrorists.
And it worked.
After that, he became an heir apparent in the eyes of the Russian people.
3 months later, Yeltsin resigned. And on his way out, a famous exchange.
He was getting into the car in the Kremlin, and the last words that he addressed to Putin before getting into his car was, "Take good care of Russia."
So Putin took over as president, and 3 months after that, won his first election. But just because Putin won the presidency, that didn't mean he had all the power. This is Michael McFall.
I was U.S. ambassador from 2012 to 2014. In the 1990s, there was a fire sale of all the things worth owning in Russia, and certain people,
the oligarchs,
did better than others in that fire sale, sometimes called privatization, and those people tended to be well connected with the Yeltsin regime, and they weren't Putin's friends. But they probably miscalculated, thinking that they could easily find a way to influence him.
Okay guys, moving further, our stop on profit for Swiss franc to 92.021. Okay? Okay? Okay guys, please copy this trade, please change your stop on profit. Okay, stay safe.
Russia's richest person, worth $15 billion, but he ran afoul of President Vladimir Putin and spent a decade in prison.
With domestic power consolidated, Putin focused on restoring Russia's global influence.
Putin is the guy who believes in the expansionist Russian state. Georgia and Ukraine and all the other Soviet republics that split off when the Soviet Union fell apart, he still believes that they're traditional Russian satellites. A lot of his strategy is about keeping them in the orbit. That Yeltsin line, take good care of Russia, that's how he understands it.
And he used annexation and invasion, as well as oil, gas, and trade to keep former Soviet republics in Russia's orbit. In 2008, Putin's 2 terms were up, and he decided to step down as president. Dmitry Medvedev stepped in as president, and Putin went back to prime minister. But really,
Putin never left power. He pretty much continued running the country, and Medvedev was a bit of a figurehead.
There was actually a period of cooperation between Russia and the U.S. that benefited both countries during Medvedev's presidency.
Because Medvedev did not have the same negative attitude towards the West as Putin did.
But when Putin came back to run for a 3rd term, in the lead up to the 2012 election, it was widely believed that both the presidential and parliamentary elections were rigged, and Russians took to the streets. Putin blamed the protests squarely on America, and more specifically, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton.
He believed that she had sent, and this is his words, a signal to demonstrators.
Still, Putin won by a huge margin and set about crushing the protest movement immediately upon his return to the Kremlin. Over the next few years, Russia's economy tumbled. Putin annexed Crimea, leading to sanctions. The price of oil fell drastically. The ruble hit a new low, and America played down Russia's influence, with Obama calling Russia a regional power. Despite all of that, Putin's approval rating remained sky high, and then an opportunity for payback.
I think I'd get along very well with Vladimir Putin.
In 2016, there was one candidate who called Vladimir Putin very smart.
Trump exhibited tolerance towards Putin's actions annexing Crimea, and similar views on NATO and sanctions.
Secretary Clinton didn't support any of those views.
Even though Putin denies any wrongdoing,
U.S. elections.
Yes.
the U.S. has accused Russia of being behind the leaking of 20,000 Democratic National Committee emails, which many say helped Trump beat Hillary Clinton in the presidential election. Which leaves us here with the possibility of a President Putin until 2024, positioning Russia to be the world power he always imagined it should be.
Jack Ma is Asia's richest man and most recognizable business tycoon. He's the chairman of Alibaba, China's e-commerce giant and one of the 10 largest companies in the world. Yet he still wants more.
We know where we're going. We want to be the 5th largest economy.
Big words from the man some call Asia's Jeff Bezos. He's confident, he's charismatic, and he's definitely not the average CEO. This is how a poor school teacher went from the classroom to being one of the most influential multi-billionaires in the world. Ma was born in China's southeastern city Hangzhou in 1964. His parents were traditional musician storytellers. As a teenager, he started to learn English from foreign tourists after China opened up in the late 1970s.
And then for 9 years, Jack Ma hung around outside the Hangzhou Hotel, which is now called the Shangri-La. He would get up at 5 a.m. to talk to travelers.
That's Bloomberg technology reporter Lulu Chen.
And I cover China Internet for Bloomberg.
Ma failed China's National University entrance exam twice before being admitted to local teachers' college. He graduated in 1988. He applied for 30 jobs and got rejected, including from the fast food giant KFC.
When KFC came to China, come to us say, 24 people went for the job. 24 Only 3 people accepted. I was the only one guy.
Then Ma got a job at a local university and taught English there for about 5 years, earning just $15 a month. On the side, he started a translation company with several friends. During a company trip to the US in 1995, Ma had his first encounter with the internet at a friend's place in Seattle.
I searched the first word, beer. I don't know why, because it's easy to spell, baby. And I see beers from Germany, beers from USA, beers from Japan, but there's no beer from China.
So he searched for the word China instead and still couldn't find anything. And that got him thinking. He wanted to build something that would put China on the world's map.
He started China Pages, a Yellow Pages-like website, but it didn't take off. Then Ma joined a government agency in Beijing to help set up a website. By 1999, the internet stock boom had gripped Wall Street, and back in his Hangzhou apartment, Ma decided to try again. With his wife and a group of friends, Ma raised $80,000 and set up Alibaba, a site that allowed businesses to sell stuff to each other.
人家美国人强就强它的硬件，强就强它的系统建设，这方面确实比你早。但是玩信息玩软的，中国人的脑袋绝不比你们差。我们在座的所有人的脑袋绝不比你们差。
By 2000, Alibaba had raised $25 million from investors, including Goldman Sachs and SoftBank.
He had no business plan and zero revenue, but his eyes was very strong eyes.
In 2003, Alibaba started Taobao, a platform for individual sellers to trade with each other, and publicly declared war against eBay, who had started to make a foray into China.
Jack Ma has this famous saying that Alibaba is a crocodile in the Yangtze River, whereas eBay is a shark in the ocean. And if they fight eBay in the ocean, then they'll lose. But if they fight them in the Yangtze River, then they have a home base advantage.
In 2007, just 1 year after it forced eBay out of China, Alibaba debuted its business-facing division on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. But it delisted 5 years later as its performance sagged. But in 2014, Alibaba raised $25 billion in the world's biggest IPO in New York.
Everybody should have a dream. What if that dream comes true?
After achieving dominance in the business of e-commerce in China, Alibaba has been building an internet empire worth $472 billion, with businesses in cloud computing, online video streaming, movie production, healthcare, sports, retail, and even news media.
Alibaba buying into South China Morning Post really raised eyebrows. This is the largest English newspaper in Hong Kong, and it shows that Jack Ma's ambitions weren't limited to e-commerce. He wanted to influence not just Chinese users, but also overseas users as well.
The US has criticized Alibaba for allowing companies to sell counterfeit and poorly made goods, but in China, it enjoys the favor of China's government. It's part of Ma's company philosophy.
In love with the government, but don't marry with them.
Jack Ma's an extremely fortunate man for jumping on the internet sector so early. Note that this is a person who has no coding skills at all. He's a natural showman and a gifted public speaker and really able to convince others to believe in his vision.
Ma's vision of growing Alibaba to be the world's 5th largest economy faces strong competition at home and abroad. It will require more than just naked ambition and charisma, but Ma is great at getting himself in the right place at the right time. So far, it's served him well.
Peter Thiel is a walking contradiction. He got his bachelor's and Juris Doctorate from Stanford, but speaks out about the horrors of higher education, saying college is
as corrupt as the Catholic Church was 500 years ago.
He's a staunch supporter of the free press, yet he bankrolled a lawsuit to bankrupt an independent media company.
But these were not journalists.
And most of all, he's an immigrant and libertarian who's the most public supporter of Donald Trump in all of Silicon Valley.
What Trump represents isn't crazy, and it's not going away.
This is the story of how an openly gay, immigrant genius, libertarian billionaire went from tech contrarian to Silicon Valley's biggest Trump supporter. Peter Thiel was born on October 11, 1967 in Frankfurt, West Germany, to Suzanne and Klaus Thiel. Peter's family emigrated to Cleveland, Ohio when he was 1. An Ayn Rand devotee during his youth, Thiel attended Stanford University majoring in philosophy.
His Stanford experience shaped a really big part of who he decided to surround himself with.
That's Lizette Chapman.
And I cover technology and venture capital here at Bloomberg.
He and his Stanford friends made their first big splash in tech with PayPal. After selling to eBay for $1.5 billion, they would become known as the PayPal Mafia for each incredible success after PayPal. For Thiel, that began with an early, modest $500,000 investment in Facebook.
And in VC speak, early means big risk, but also big reward. He turned that initial $500,000 investment into more than $1 billion in cash.
But Thiel was just getting started with Facebook, and he went on to make a whole bunch of wildly successful investments.
From SpaceX to Airbnb to one of the largest, most powerful companies in the United States, if not the world, and of course that's Palantir.
The incredibly controversial secretive data mining startup he founded with his colleagues from PayPal. It connects data silos and then allows non-technical people to search that information for patterns. Data like
financial information, feeds from video cameras, biometric details, passport information, flight manifest.
Palantir doesn't talk much about how they collect this data, who has access to it, or what they do with it. But they have contracts with
the Department of Homeland Security and the CIA and the Department of Justice and the Securities and Exchange Commission.
And several other federal agencies. It's the richest company you've never heard of, valued at $20 billion. But there are plenty of obscenely wealthy people in Silicon Valley. What makes him different...
He's a complex ball of multiple contradictions.
Take college, for example. Even though college was extremely important for Thiel, there's something called the Thiel Fellowship.
In exchange for dropping out and a promise not to pursue college, Thiel would give them $100,000 each.
You basically tell people that if you get a diploma, you're saved. Otherwise you go to hell. You go to Yale or you go to jail.
Also, his relationship with the press.
Here's another contradiction. He's donated to free press initiatives, including the Committee to Protect Journalists.
But he also secretly spent tens of millions of dollars bankrolling a lawsuit filed by Hulk Hogan over the publication of a sex tape and bankrupting the independently run Gawker Media. Why did he do this? Because in 2007, one of Gawker Media's blogs, ValueAg, outed him as gay. And with the lawsuit, he
found an opportunity to get back at them by funding the lawsuit that Hulk Hogan was able to bring then, but he wouldn't have been able to do that without Thiel's money.
And finally, Thiel's biggest contradiction, his endorsement of Donald Trump.
When he was asked about his support for Trump, he was surprised at the outrage that came with it from many of his colleagues in Silicon Valley. He didn't want more of the establishment.
No matter how crazy this election seems, it is less crazy than the condition of our country.
After briefly supporting Carly Fiorina in the primaries, Thiel pivoted to Trump, donating $1.25 million to Trump and his associated super PACs in October 2016. And he didn't just help Trump financially. He gave a full-throated keynote speech supporting Trump at the Republican National Convention.
I'm not a politician, but neither is Donald Trump. He is a builder, and it's time to rebuild America.
And when Trump was finally elected, Thiel was given the reins to an enormous amount of power.
And I want to thank you, man. You have a very special guy.
He was named the transitional advisor. And in that role, he did a lot of interviewing and a lot of vetting to fill hundreds of cabinet positions and different jobs within the administration.
But it turns out Thiel's support isn't unconditional.
Talking to people who spend time with him, I have also heard that he is no longer a great supporter of Trump.
It was reported that Thiel was unhappy with the direction of Trump's presidency. Ever since, he's been mum, making no public appearances, no statements, and staying out of the spotlight altogether. Although there have been suggestions that Trump could tap Thiel for a top intelligence post or ambassadorship, there's no indication he'd accept.
He's described his relationship with politics as schizophrenic. He gets really involved, and then he runs away as fast as possible.
Whether Thiel takes a new position or simply continues as a board director at Facebook and Palantir, at just 50 years old, he's primed to wield some serious influence in technology and politics for decades to come.
Two 2016 was again the hottest year on record, and the previous 17 years have seen our 16 most scorching. Scientists overwhelmingly agree. Global warming is the culprit. And it's just getting started. Ice caps, extreme weather, wildfires, droughts, and the hits keep coming. What are we doing about it? In 2015, the world took its boldest step yet to stem climate change with a historic accord in Paris. But now comes the hard part. Nations must change energy policies and invest huge amounts of money, and they will likely do it without the United States. President Donald Trump announced on June 1st that the U.S. would withdraw from the accord.
The reality is that withdrawing is in America's economic interest and won't matter much to the climate.
Here's the situation. Decades in the making, the Paris Agreement united the U.S., China, and more than 190 other nations in a push to limit fossil fuel pollution. The UN-sponsored plan secured pledges to cut greenhouse gases, the emissions that trap heat in the Earth's atmosphere, in an effort to avoid the rising seas and other environmental disasters that climate models predict. But even if all pledges are met, the globe is expected to warm by as much as 3.4 degrees Celsius this century, more than the UN target of well below 2 degrees. Meeting the Paris Agreement means that governments will have to offer more incentives for clean energy, scale back support for fossil fuels, make emissions more costly, and reduce deforestation. It's estimated that the deal will require $13.5 trillion of spending through 2030. Here's the argument. Unlike past climate pacts such as the Kyoto Protocol, each country set its own Paris targets and then promised to revisit and improve them. The US was primed to play a lead role in climate change, but Trump's energy independence executive order reverses Obama-era rules and directives put in place to combat climate change, and expands production of coal, the dirtiest fossil fuel. The resulting policies threaten the global fight against climate change. Without the US commitment to emissions reduction, other countries may join it in abandoning the Paris Agreement. This could make it almost impossible and even more expensive down the line to stop climate change. Optimists argue that the shift to a lower carbon future is already underway. Businesses, cities, and US states, such as California, are already investing in wind and solar and taking other steps to make it work.
I've actually been called an environmentalist, if you can believe that.
There's an inherent attraction to light and being human. And I think on a very deep psychological level, light is this way in which we experience the energy surrounding us in a very personal manner. My name is Matt Dilling. I'm the founder of Light Bright Neon Studio, and we manufacture, produce, and restore neon works of art and design. Origins of the creative content of a lot of the work at Lightbright comes from a variety of sources. Sometimes people come with a napkin sketch. Some people come with an Adobe Illustrator file. And we have a whole design team who then we kind of work together to help create layouts of what it might look like. Scale it up and create a paper template using a pen plotter. And that paper template actually becomes our guide for what we're going to bend the neon to. We take from the office into the glass shop. We pick out the right size tubing with the right color for the right size project. From there, we heat up the glass tubing. The torches heat the glass well in excess of 1,000 degrees in order for it to get into its molten state. We heat up and bend the glass tubing to match the template. One of our chandeliers has over 100 different bends in it. So each one of those bends has to be marked for a heated up bend. We also have to allow the glass to cool between the bends so that the next area can be worked on and heated up in its own unique fashion. It turns into spaghetti, and then we have to make sure that that spaghetti lines back up and cools to the template. We use a blow hose to connect our mouth to the tube, create a volume that's closed, and we can control the pressure in there with our mouth. There's just a variety of challenges that come up inherently in working with glass. Glass can crack due to stress, and sometimes you'll just have a batch that all it wants to do when it gets near a torch is crack. After we've bent various components, we have to go in using the crossfire or the hand torch and actually weld all of those pieces together. The last step on that is then to weld on electrodes onto either end. Each one of those steps is very, very specific. I draw inspiration from so many different experiences. It's hard to come up with one thing that's particular, but one of the ways that I really am able to connect with the creative is to float. Floating is a similar experience to meditation, to psychedelics. Going into a blackened room and laying out in a body of water and salt that's heated to your body temperature, and it allows for all sort of external stimulation to fall away. And your internal world really begins to bubble up and manifest. You really get to experience a different relationship to your mind. I think I work with neon because I can't not work with it. It's so challenging and so rewarding. And those things are so intertwined that there's no way of separating it out. I learn so much and continue to learn so much by working with it. I find so much inspiration in working with it, and I just continue to experience new and different things through the medium. It's that close to me at this point. Once the neon tube is completed, we have to hook it up to our manifold for bombarding. The manifold is opened, a vacuum is drawn. We check the tube for leaks with our Tesla coil. We close the tube back off, and we heat it up using a very large and powerful transformer. As the tube is heated up, it releases anything that's not inert inside the tube, and we evacuate that out. We introduce the gas into it. And we seal the tube off, sealing into that tube whatever gas we introduced into it. I think my favorite part of making a neon light is when you see it lit up for the first time. Different gases, when electrified, emit different wavelengths of light. Neon gas is this very bright orange, fiery red color. Argon gas creates a very intense blue, but that light output that is produced can then be expressed in a different wavelength by coating the inside of the tubes with a phosphor coating that takes that one wavelength of light and emits at different wavelengths. We bring it over to the aging table where we hook it up to an age-in transformer and allow it to settle, age the gas in that we've introduced to it. There's always a stray particle of something left inside the tube. But that time that the oxide coating can act to scrub whatever is left inside the tube while things are getting settled into place. Once the tubes are aged in, we move on to our process of assembling two halves of the fixture together in a jig, gluing up the center of the fixture to its spindle. Once the adhesive dried, we would connect the wires from the fixture together into a transformer, and we turn on power and it lights up. Part of what we love about what we do here is that we try and put out into the world the kind of things that we'd like to see. I still am surprised when it lights up. I'm still excited when I get to see it illuminated. There's an ineffable quality to it. To me, is this insight into the inner workings of the universe. It literally is. It's a way of looking at what is surrounding us in the cosmos in a new light.
It's a bit like an addiction. You've got to make something. You have to do something. It's borderline obsession. And every bike we build is my favourite bike at the time, and as soon as it's done, I want to build another one. Sven Cycles is something I've been thinking about ever since I started cycling in my late teens. We want bikes that ultimately you'll really enjoy riding. There's never a bike that's the same. There's always a slight change. And as we build them individually as well, they have the marks of a bike that's built by hand. Most people I know cycle have an idea of their dream bicycle. And it may be an evolving idea you've had in your head. And we've worked with a lot of people that have come to us with sketches and scrapbooks. It's really, really nice to build something that's just one-off and unique. I think a lot of people see a bicycle as two wheels and a frame in the middle. There are a lot of subtle changes and nuances in design which can change the riding characteristics quite dramatically. I'm a really big fan of modernist architecture, and the simplicity of a modernist building is really hard to achieve. And with some of our bikes, they may look very simple, but I think people should not underestimate the time and effort that goes into designing a product. Tubing is key to a bike's feel and ride. Reynolds tubing has been in my life ever since I can remember. Growing up, I could never afford a frame manufactured with their tubing. We can now put a badge on our bike saying manufactured at Reynolds, which is a sort of thing as a kid I just wouldn't have believed was going to happen. Every part of the bike has a specific tube. It's not universal. The first thing we do is get the tubes out, check they're correct, check the wall thicknesses, sand the edges, make sure it's all really clean, because if it's not clean, the tubes won't join together correctly. We build in steel because I still believe it's one of the best materials to use. It's been used in bikes since the late 1800s, and they're still using it now for a very good reason. It's the flexibility that we can replace the tube, repaint the bike, and you wouldn't know it's damaged. I just like working with it. It's very sculptural. This isn't sort of aerospace precision engineering. It's a steel rule and a marker. So when we're cutting the tubes, it's within a mil or two. But what we're trying to do is take the best from bicycle building in the past and add a little bit of modern flair to it. There's various techniques for building bicycles. We do a thing called fillet brazing, where you connect a pipe together. We use a bronze rod and a flame. We heat the tubes up to the same temperature and we fill the joint with bronze. And it gives a very, very sort of fluid, lovely, sort of quite sculptural feel. You've got to practice. You've got to be able to judge material temperatures. You've got to just look at it and you just get a feel for it. It's a stage where your tubes start to look a bit like a bicycle. My father's a jeweler. He'd make sort of very pretty things, which are lovely, but for me, they don't really have any function. What I love about bicycles, you can start on a Monday with a box of tubes, you can be riding it by the weekend, and it can last you for the rest of your life. Outside of the frame and forks, the other most important part is the wheels and tyres. When you build the wheels, you have to lace them, so there's little holes going all the way around the rim. You poke the spoke through. We do build all our wheels by hand here because a machine can't get 30 years worth of wheel building experience. Colour is very, very personal. With any of our bikes, you can have them painted whatever colour you want. We've matched one to a teapot, so we can get that scanned and we can match that, or someone's favourite item of clothing. I like to let the bike sit for 4 or 5 days minimum, just so the paint can have time to cure a little bit, and then we assemble it. We get out all the new components, and it's a case of putting them together. Some bikes you can assemble in 3 hours, some will take 3 days. And we've built bikes that cost in the £10,000 plus mark. Some people, they're saving up and this is their bike and they're going to own it for the rest of their lives. So we just want to make sure they get the right thing. I think the bike for me was the first time I had some freedom. So as soon as I had one, I was off. A lot of people still get that thrill as when they were a kid blasting down a hill, wind going through their hair. It's fun. Everyone has their favourite jacket or something that just makes them feel good. If you've got a bike that fits well, you actually feel part of it. Building bicycles as a creative outlet is fantastic. It's not something you do because you're going to get a big paycheck at the end of the day. You do it something you have a passion for it.
If you ever saw a wooden surfboard, it was probably hanging in somebody's house or underneath the deck. But kind of in the last 10 or 15 years, wood has made a big comeback. They surf wonderfully. It's beautiful and it feels great to be on one of them. I always had a love for wood and kind of passionate about things that went in the water. I've kind of been around wooden boats most of my life. There's just so much character. The way they're built, the stories that come with them, a lot of that has translated over to why we build surfboards the way we do. When we first started thinking about building surfboards, wood was the natural material we chose. They have a very high strength to weight ratio. Wooden surfboards have the longest history of use in the surf world than any other material. People have been surfing wooden surfboards since kind of the first documented history of people riding waves. The board starts in CAD, where we take a 3D model, break down the shape, and kind of create frames and templates and all the inner parts of the board that we get cut on a CNC machine. We take those frames and we just pop them out, assemble the frame into kind of a skeleton. We go out to our lumber shed, pick a bunch of cedar, and bring them into our mill shop, put glue along the edges, clamp it all together into a panel. Everything's book matched, you have symmetry in the colors and texture of the wood. Cut your outline. take our assembled frame, gently put it down right on top of the plank. Once that foundation is started, you're basically building up the three-dimensional shape, the outside part of the board, using lots of strips that kind of interlock and fit together. Every piece of wood is going to be different, and it's all going to react differently. There are frustrations with it, but I think that's one of the things that keeps it challenging. You learn to read the kind of what the grain lines are doing and what the color of the wood is telling you. Once those rails are cleaned up, we put our top planks on. It's a little bit like putting a lid on a box. It's like, this is it. Whatever's inside that board is staying inside that board. And by tensioning some rope, you can clamp the two together. It's like a time capsule. What makes our boards unique are they are built right here in New York. They're built using material that grows right here in the state of Maine. They're built 100% by hand by local craftspeople and surfers. There's a lot of time that goes into these boards, between 40 and 60 hours start to finish. We wanted to build surfboards that were as hollow as they could be, but still be strong enough to work well. Too light and they don't surf well, but too heavy and they don't surf well. So there's a balance point there, and that's where we try to be. Taking the board off the rocker table, once the top has gone on, that is by far one of my top favorite parts. It's just you and a shaping stand, a board, and a hand plane. Everything else is out of your view. It's simple, it's pleasurable, it's quiet. You can be with your thoughts and you can just kind of be present. There's something about taking a nice sharp edge tool to a beautiful piece of wood and feeling the curls coming off and knowing that every pass that you're making, you're kind of getting it closer and closer to what you have in mind. Once we've shaped it down and the board's looking like it's supposed to look like, it's time for it to go into the glassing room. 4-ounce fiberglass, laying it over the board, draping it over the edges, cutting it, applying epoxy, and on the board. Once both sides are lamb coated, it's time to put in the hardware. Drill and router and install the fin box. And on the other side, we drill and put in the leash plug and a vent. There's a lot of air just naturally inside the board, and that air wants to expand and contract with temperature changes. And that vent has a little piece of Gore-Tex fabric in it, and it allows air to kind of breathe both ways, but it doesn't allow water to get in. Once all that hardware is put in, it goes back into the glassing room. We brush a nice, beautiful, thick coat of epoxy over the whole surface, and that we call a gloss coat. That's supposed to look beautiful and glossy and shiny and flawless. You get to see that board come to life. Whatever the colors in the wood, they really come out. It just makes it look like candy. You just want to touch it and run your hands down it, and it's just kind of the icing on the cake. Once everything is hard, we put it into what we call the oven, get that epoxy to cure, really kind of bake it, and just get it to harden. Put in the fin, screw in the vent.
Okay, traders, I'm going to move further my stop on profit. So all of you guys who decided to trade Swiss franc, please move your stop on profit to 0.91971. In our case, it will give us £1,500 in profit. Okay? I'll speak to you later, guys.
They 100% feel the amount of work and the amount of passion that went into the board. So I'm not really looking at hours and efficiency. We're looking at like doing it right and enjoying it as we go.
Ma Baoli, better known as Gang La, is one of the 4 grand marshals leading New York's Pride Parade this year. But in the country he comes from, being gay is still a social taboo. The CEO of a Beijing-based internet company is on a mission to improve the lives of millions of gay men in China.
对于每一个 LGBT 人群来说，即使这个国家不允许你跟同性爱人结婚，但是你仍然要勇敢地去选择你自己的生活，你仍然应该拥有幸福生活的权利。
Ma's company Blue City runs an app and a website specifically for gay men. Blued is one of the biggest gay social networking apps in the world, with an estimated 30 million registered users. Unlike most other apps, Blued is more than just dating or hookups.
大家可以在我们这个软件里面找他自己的情感，然后可以阅读相关的内容，然后可以进行一些娱乐，比如玩游戏啊，比如看直播啊等等。
Back in 2000, when Ma studied at a police school in northern China, he realized he didn't feel like everyone else.
因为他们都找女朋友，然后谈恋爱，但是我对长得好看的同性的男生，我反而觉得对我更有吸引力。所以那个时候我就到互联网上去找这样的一些资料，然后希望能够告诉我自己，我到底是谁。互联网上所有的信息都是负面的，都是错的，就是说同性恋要电击疗法，要被治疗，然后要吃药等等。
After visiting some foreign websites with different attitudes to homosexuality, Ma created his own site for a Chinese audience, encouraging people that
他们也是正常的，他们不用自卑，然后也不用自杀。
Even though attitudes towards homosexuals are slowly changing in China, it's still a social stigma. The virtual world of Blued, where members can be open about their sexuality, is for most a striking contrast to their real lives. This is live streaming, a function added to Blued in late 2015, right as the internet craze was starting to take off in China. Many self-made stars like Jin make decent amounts of money by receiving audiences' virtual currencies and gifts.
我们不是彼此的初恋，初恋这种事儿多不靠谱啊。
For Kyle and Klaus, a couple who have come out, live streaming on Blued means something different.
其实我经常会收到很多粉丝的一些互动的留言，就是类似就是说你们让我们看到了同志情侣之间的一些希望啊，我看到这样的留言我是很欣慰。
The government's rules for acceptable content online may shift quickly in China, with LGBT material in a grey area. Many companies feel the chill of the recent internet crackdown, but Blue City still runs as usual. Ma has won the Chinese government's trust by helping with HIV prevention among gay men. A third of the company's staff are dedicated to screening pornographic and politically sensitive content.
我不太多的愿意去对抗，我更多的愿意去对话，去改变他们的想法。我觉得这个可能在中国来说是更有效的。
In the past 5 years, Blue City has grown from a team of 7 people to a promising business with about 250 staff. Ma said the company earned over $15 million last year, mainly through advertising and selling virtual currencies to live streaming audiences. Now the company is expanding overseas.
我希望吧，通过我们的努力，Blue能够成为全球第一家在美国纳斯达克或者是纽交所上市的这样的同志互联网公司。
is Rich Chiga. He's a Chinese rapper by way of Indonesia, and he's very popular on the internet. This is Joji. He's a Japanese-Australian singer, and he's also very popular on the internet. Plus, Joji invented the Harlem Shake meme. Let me say that again. This guy, Joji, in the blood bathtub, invented the Harlem Shake meme. But we'll come back to that. So Rich and Joji are both signed to 88 Rising, an entertainment company hoping to build a lasting global brand that will outlive singular moments of virality. They primarily create content combining Asian culture and hip-hop, a formula that apparently pleases the internet gods greatly. They've only been around for 18 months, but they're already putting up major label numbers.
I think that we have an unprecedented collective of talent, a group of predominantly Asian artists, really making waves globally, which from an independent point of view as well.
88's founder, Sean Miyashiro, cut his teeth launching Vice's electronic music channel, Thump. But quickly, Sean became interested in life beyond dance music.
I knew that after launching a whole content platform that I have kind of the ability and the know-how to do it again, but for what was the question?
So Sean moved to the Bronx to start over and figure it out. He couldn't afford an office space, so he worked out of his car at the top of a grimy parking garage.
Everything kind of started here. If you look around, this is my environment. This is my serenity, really. 88 Rising was built here. Built on the grounds of LA Fitness, residence in a parking garage. I was living in the Bronx. I'm just damn, where the hell do I go? So I just come up here and I I just kind of figure things out every single day. Being okay, what the hell is this thing? Coming here was kind of my own kind of private office, basically. To be honest, I would even go to the bathroom here. I would take pisses here, you know what I mean? It was, it's just too far to go back down there. When I need Wi-Fi, I'd spend a good part of the day at Dunkin' Donuts. Hi, how are you? Can I get a chicken snack wrap?
Before 88 Rising officially launched, Sean caught a surprise break in the form of a Twitter friendship with a funny 16-year-old kid from Indonesia named Brian, who taught himself English by watching Rubik's Cube tutorial videos on YouTube. Seriously, that's true.
I thought his Twitter was genius, from the future, just crazy. And just the shit that he was saying, the memes he was making. But I didn't know that he rapped or anything like that. I really didn't. And he came up with that stick 2 weeks later.
12 in the morning, pop shells for a living and baby gon' smell blood trail every minute, bro.
Dat Stick was Brian's first ever attempt at making a rap song, and it immediately went viral.
Everything was great about it. But the one thing that I noticed is the song was hard as hell. Just everything about it, man. Just it was menacing, bro.
Soon after the video dropped, Brian signed with 88 Rising.
I'll FaceTime with Rich. Sorry for calling you Rich Chiga on my phone, Rich. Brian, he gets super pissed off that he's saved in my phone as Rich Chiga. He's like, dude, am I not a human to you? What's good, bro?
What's good, brother?
How you doing?
Doing great. I did the sound check.
How was it?
It was tight.
So, Brian could definitely rap, but some viewers understandably took offense at a Chinese kid satirizing rap cliches and calling himself Rich Chiga. But if a group of well-known rappers saw the video and genuinely liked it, that could at least help validate Brian as a legit hip-hop artist. Plus, it could be really funny.
It was just kind of an idea that I just had on the spot. Everything that rappers say is better and funnier and smarter and wittier. It's just more entertaining. We just edit it as tight as possible, put it up, and it really worked.
12 in the morning, pop shit, still living in.
Yo, this nigga got a pouch on and a Reebok pouch. This is the hardest nigga of all time.
You said when you come for a trigger like me, that was dope.
It's just lit, and I think people will take it as a joke at first, but it's like if he ran with that and kept doing more videos like that, it's just lit.
You know, I'd never been to America before, and like all of a sudden, just like I see like all the rappers that I listen to just like reacting to my stuff, and I was like, what? How did this happen?
The reaction video also went viral, and even led to a remix of Dat Stick featuring Wu-Tang's Ghostface.
I'll get on that track. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Really, on the remix?
Yeah. Oh, you know him?
And yeah, the remix went viral too. Brian has since acknowledged the misstep in his name and claims he may change it. But for the time being, he's still Rich Chigga to his fans. An ever-growing global audience, hungry for more releases from emerging talent around the world.
I didn't know that it was gonna be this impactful and this important to people, and I'm very thankful and blessed that it has. And every day now that I wake up, it's like it's just like a new mission every day.
A major part of that mission involves Joji. Remember the bloody bath guy? He's a former YouTube personality in the middle of a career transition.
The sound of this song, Will He, it's like a trap song that you can like slow dance to. Awkward prom shit, you know what I mean? I used to do crazy episodic internet videos. It was going well, and one day it was me and a few friends just in a room. We were casually chilling, and then someone plays the song, and it's brand new at the time. I happened to have a lot of costumes laying around, so I told the other guys, I was like, get in these costumes and let's just dance to it. Like, who cares? We were like, okay, let's just go crazy at the drop. So that video goes up. I go to sleep, and the next morning, everyone's doing it. Like, next morning. That taught me a lot about the internet, how people want to just be a part of something. And from that point on, something changed, and I was a little better at understanding demographics and people and, what they want to see and what they want to hear. I was friends with a couple other artists who were affiliated with 88, and then I also started to realize that 88 is the bridge between Western and Asian entertainment, and I really wanted to be a part of that.
Joji just released the In Tongues EP, his first project as a serious artist.
Joji's In Tongues record came out a couple weeks ago. It's #2 on Billboard on the R&B charts, which is crazy for, independent release, and he's like a brand new artist.
And the success is even more impressive, knowing he went from creating something like this,
"It's just Taco Bell, what could possibly go wrong?"
to creating something Tonight, Rich Chigga has a show in New York City. Tickets sold out in an hour.
I came here, I'm first online. I was here at 1. I was the third person online.
So why'd you get here so early?
Because I want to see Rich Chigga. I want to touch him.
What do you guys think of Joji?
Oh my
God! That's my dad, son.
You guys cop the new EP or like?
Yeah. I woke up at 6 in the morning just to cop that shit. And then I listened to it, and that shit started making me cry.
This is actually kind of exciting. Every time, this never gets old. Like, you live online and social media, but like, there's nothing like just being with the people.
More often than not, viral success happens by accident. And then after an appearance on Ellen or Jimmy Kimmel, the creator's star power fizzles out. But Idiot Rising has figured out how to turn potential gimmicks into brands with an actual following that keeps coming back for the next thing.
Oh, shit!
So keep an eye out for Idiot's next move. But more than likely, it won't be covered on network television or terrestrial radio. Although, as they've already proven, nowadays that really doesn't matter.
Online retailer Farfetch is betting it can shape the future. This is its concept store, showcasing the latest in retail tech.
How do you capture all of that fantastic information that you gather in store with customers, touch and feel products? And we created a concept called the Connected Rail. And this is using a combination of RFID and ultrasound. The RFID signal recognizes the product, and the ultrasound recognizes the movement. Take the product off, and then you'll start to see your products appear. And essentially, it's like online browsing behavior. Whichever products you touch and pick up in the store are automatically sent to your app. This is effectively what you've created is your in-store wish list. In the middle, you'll see essentially a hologram of the product. What the customer sees, they control the experience on a touch device. What this allows the customer to do is take elements of products and then add their own style to it. Right, so this is the connected mirror. So in this example, I see my products. I select a coat, and that's tried it, and it's slightly too big for me. So what I can do is choose an alternative size and send a request to the sales associate, and they'll bring that size to me in the fitting room mirror. You'll also see that we've got some product recommendations here. Crucially, the sales associate's able to push items into the mirror from their device. If you wanted to, you could simply use the mirror and pay and go. Your items would then be packed and dispatched to you afterwards.
Do you want me to turn you so you're looking outwards? Yes, please. How about there? First time we came out with B, Jade said, it feels like I've been released from prison. Do you want these, Mrs?
Definitely.
Definitely. Right.
Yeah.
And she could say hello to everybody, people she hadn't seen for months.
It's
It's
Jade.
Jade.
Oh. So you can talk to Jade through this.
Hi, Katie. She's there.
Hi.
Every time anyone's seen her, they want to know why she's there. And it's kind of the opposite of when you're in a wheelchair and people see you and they kind of go, oh, should I look? I don't know what the right protocol is. When there's a tiny robot with its bright little eyes going around just looking happy everywhere, it really opens you up for conversation.
You've got some friends here, look.
Hiya. When I saw her for the first time, I remember thinking, this is going to change things. This is one of those points where if this was a book, this would be the cliffhanger. condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which means that I have a lot of dislocations, there's a lot of pain, and a lot of seizures and whatnot. So I can end up on my own in my room for long periods of time.
Yeah, my love.
A lot of the time, with a condition like my own, of course there's the pain, and the pain is bad, and the dislocations are bad, and the seizures and being in paralysis and never knowing whether you're going to be able to wake up properly tomorrow, that's bad. But what's worse still is being able to count the number of people you see a day on one hand.
Are you ready?
Sure am, I'm just hoping the connection's going to stay.
Yeah, me too. Alright, here we go.
When you're used to just the same little metre by metre and a half window every day, and you've been there for months, being able to just see the sky from somewhere else, or the tops of trees, or a sign, is incredible. Or being able to have that kind of chat in the car that most people would probably take for granted.
I'm going to go past Grandma and Grandad so you can give them a wave. Now, if Jade is particularly seizure-y, she can still take part. And that's brilliant, really, because before she would just be left in a bed or in the house with just her carers. It's quite a small world, that.
Right, so there's one of her. Here, this costume I'm busy making at the moment. When I'm not on bed rest and I'm not just wearing pyjamas all the time, I enjoy being able to dress as different characters and go to Comic Cons and that kind of thing, because it just lets me show a different side of myself, and it's a bit of fun. If you can't go out that often, you've got to enjoy it when you do.
Was that? Good.
It's one of those weird things where I want to not have to use B because I want to be well enough to be able to go to those places myself. Like, it really makes a big difference to me to be able to go into school. But the thing is, with my condition fluctuating all of the time, I can't go into school reliably. Today's the first day that I've been in school via B, and so far it's interesting. Still a few little things that we need to work out, but for the most part I think it's going fairly well. And it's brilliant because I can really tell the difference between today and yesterday. How yesterday I forced myself to go into school when I wasn't very well, and I was really tired afterwards and ended up having loads of seizures, whereas today I've been able to do all of the work. I've been able to keep a clear head and not be ill, which means I'm able to be more focused on my schoolwork.
So there is my first step of working, is to simplify root 8. The algebra test is next week.
Now I'm trying to make friendships which I'll be able to maintain with B. Before that, I end up letting people down quite often. B gives me hope, yeah. She's just always there, and if I can't do something, she can. And if I need sort of assistance to be able to make commitments, then she's there, and she means that I feel like a more valuable person because I'm more reliable.
When it debuted, the 4G wireless we have today allowed people for the first time to hit the road and explore unknown places with only a smartphone for directions. When 5G arrives, it could enable driverless cars to take us there as well. 5G stands for 5th generation mobile networks or wireless systems. It's insanely fast and can accommodate a lot more connected devices. But the reason it's being called revolutionary is because 5G will allow connected devices to speak to each other as well as people.
Right now we're living in a world where really it's a one-way experience.
That's Bloomberg tech reporter Ian King.
The network talks to your phone, you look at your phone and access data, then you send something back to the network. What we're being told about 5G is that really for the first time we're going to see machines communicating with each other over mobile networks in a meaningful way.
5G could end up being 100 times faster than what we have now, with speeds that could reach 20 gigabits per second. In plain English, that means downloading a full-length HD movie in seconds. 5G will also increase total bandwidth, which we will need in order to accommodate the growing Internet of Things. We're talking about the class of devices like internet-connected refrigerators, thermostats, dog collars, but 5G will enable many, many more.
Things like your utility network, factories, where machines are just sat there not connected at all. Suddenly they're all going to be connected. Suddenly we're going to be able to have real-time monitoring. Other things like cars, like utility poles, like your light, the light poles.
But perhaps the biggest advance will be a huge reduction in communication lag time, known as latency. A network of driverless cars will need the speed of 5G to ping each other multiple times per second to avoid collisions. Near instantaneous data transfers could allow doctors to perform surgery remotely with a robotic scalpel. So how will all this work? First, you need to improve network density.
And that's just a fancy word for saying you put more towers out there. What we're being told is that's not actually the case with 5G.
The idea is 5G will not only use the existing mobile spectrum, but also tap into higher frequencies called millimeter waves. Millimeter waves can carry more data, but only travel short distances. This may mean you'll see a lot more of these base stations around town. And the new towers may have as many as 100 antenna ports, compared to about a dozen on 4G cell towers. So when will we get 5G? Getting 5G ready is expected to cost providers $275 billion over 7 years in the US alone. Look for the first 5G service to pop up in big cities sometime in 2019.
cubicle represents a tyranny. It confines your imagination, your thoughts, into a small physical area. Imagine pretty much every software engineer or finance person being able to, disconnect from their desk and look at holographic monitors on a beach and doing their work from there. That's not going to be science fiction. It's the modern office place.
Silicon Valley is all about building the future. A startup called Meta thinks it's getting there first, thanks to a big bet that it's made on augmented reality.
How are you?
Good, thank you. Welcome to Meta.
Thank you.
Call it a 360-degree office where you can spatialize your thoughts as part of your workflow for education, architecture, design, engineering, etc.
People often mix up augmented reality with virtual reality. VR totally blocks your ability to see or hear the real world. AR overlays holograms onto what you already see. Meta has tried to make its version of the workspace feel familiar.
You grab the hologram instead of using a controller or a mouse, and your brain already knows how to do it. In other words, we've designed an operating system that humanity has always known how to use. So you can see this eyeball, which is, by the way, photorealistic. You can see my hand is occluding the eyeball, and now the eyeball is occluding my hand, right? You see those two circles? They get small, and then they turn into this glowing white ball, and then I can move my hand around supernaturally. I can do this with two hands and rotate the thing. I could stretch it. I could throw it back right into the shelving system, and that's all you have to learn to become a modern worker.
And to prove this, the employees at Meta have started to get rid of their computer monitors, trading them in for Meta's augmented reality headsets. Myron thinks that in less than a decade, we'll all be just wearing strips of glass that can project.
In the early 80s, everybody had computers on their desktop, but no one was using them because they had a lot of work to do. So they were still using typewriters. And at some point, the CEO took all the typewriters away and everybody was forced to use their computers. So it's very exciting to see a new generation of technology, a new paradigm.
I consider us like pioneers in the holographic wild. I'm pulling up my browser with my hands and sending out emails to colleagues and just kind of really acclimating to the new environment.
Now you're putting on my computer, essentially. Our digital lives live on our phones. We have all of our pictures and notes and all these kinds of things. So, and why don't you write yourself a little sticky note? I like it. And go ahead and just take your fist right over the top of the sticky note and close your fist. And now...
Oh, what? Meta's own transition to augmented reality has run into plenty of unexpected problems. And it's still going to be a while before you'll start to see these devices in your office. But I think it's a future worth waiting for.
If we could see these holograms between us, we will have been able to share our work with one another more naturally, more efficiently, and more productively than ever before. Humanity will have evolved slightly.
This is Hatsune Miku, Japan's sensational virtual pop star. She's released over 100,000 songs in multiple languages and performed sold-out concerts around the world. Her image has appeared in games, on TV, in car races, and is even etched on the side of a Japanese space rocket.
I came for Hatsune Miku, Carlos.
She's Lady Gaga's favorite digital pop star and opened shows for her in the US 3 years ago. Tens of thousands of fans attended her exhibition and live shows near Tokyo recently.
理想のアイドルっていうとどの曲でもミクはすごい綺麗に歌ってくれる。
他没有缺点啊，没有任何让我们感到不开心的一些新闻。
She's everything to everybody. That's probably why she's so popular.
Miku's creator Hiroyuki Ito and his Sapporo-based company have been developing the virtual diva for over 10 years.
初音ミクとはキャラクターとしてすごくYouTube とかで検索するとたくさんの初音ミク出てくるんですけども、元々の初音ミクのその原点は歌声を合成するソフトウェアなんです。
Both the software and character are named Hatsune Miku, meaning the first sound of the future. Originally based on Yamaha's Vocaloid technology, Miku the software has a sound bank containing voice samples and a huge array of tools. You input the melody and lyrics, then Miku the character sings them. To date, Krypton has sold 120,000 software licenses at $200 each to fans around the world who use it to create numerous songs and share them online. Some of the fan-created songs are chosen to be part of Miku's concerts, for which they're paid a royalty fee.
もともと初音ミクっていうその存在自体がそのボトムアップって言いますか、中にはアマチュアクリエイターじゃなくて今もうすでにプロになって活躍している方もいらっしゃるんですけども。
The company also has other revenue streams. It makes money from merchandising, licensing deals, and concert ticket sales. According to the real-life musicians who perform with Hatsune Miku, the virtual pop star is interesting and surprising.
今年で3年ぐらい、ちょうど3年ぐらいやってきて、ライブも数十本、数百本やったの。そういうことが演奏によって起こせるためのそういう器みたいな感じになっています。初音ミクらしさって僕はあんまりない。初音ミクって何だってありっていうか。
For Ito, Miku has the potential to change the way we think about music.
そういう新しいそのテクノロジーによって新しい音楽のあり方っていうものを模索していきたいと思っていました。
And for her fans, it goes even further.
初音ミクって魂がないので、だからみんな魂を作り上げるために存在する。
Now, there are a lot of fitness gadgets out there. In my quest to get fit, I tested 17 of them over the last few months. At least one personal trainer I know was a little bit skeptical.
Yeah, I've been watching these new technologies come to the market for almost as long as I've been a personal trainer. They're just tricks and tropes. They're not much different than the Bowflex machines or, to be honest, the original Jane Fonda workout video.
But some of these gadgets that are just coming to the market do so much more than what they used to do, just tracking your activities. Out of all of them, this chest strap was my favorite. It comes with a robot coach that points to the future, one where you might not need a human trainer at all. And it works like this. You wear the chest strap so that it can read your heart rate, and that connects to Move's free app that talks to you.
Welcome to Move Heart Rate Hit Outdoor Running. Let's get moving and warm up in Zone 2.
Move's computerized coach tells you what to do at that exact moment, whether you're running outside or you're doing body weight exercises indoors.
Swing your arms faster to get your legs moving quicker. Let's crush this round.
And by reading your heart rate, she knows exactly how hard you're working. She keeps you honest.
Way to go, you are in the target zone. Keep pushing, you're almost at the end of the round. Don't give up.
I've been running for 7 years now, and my biggest problem is that I never push myself hard enough. I end up going on the same slow, comfortable 30-minute jog, but the Move HR Burn blasted me out of that rut. By the end of these half-hour exercises, I was drenched in sweat in a way that I never am when I work out alone. Training with a real person is great, whether that's your group instructor or your coach or your personal trainer. But humans, they're expensive. For the rest of us, this $60 gadget is all you need.
what does it take to change the world? A big army? A cure to a pandemic? A revolution? All of these take either a lot of people, thousands of hours, or massive amounts of space. But for Julian Assange, all he needs is one room, an internet connection, and the world will listen. Assange is located here, and more specifically, right here. And from that location, he's posted government secrets, classified documents, and leaked emails from some of the world's most powerful people. And in doing so, has been labeled a hero, a villain, a nihilist, and everything in between. This is how an Australian programmer sequestered in the Ecuadorian embassy in London became one of the most influential and notorious people in the world. Born in 1971 in Townsville, Australia, Assange has always been on the move. Living in over 30 homes by the time he was in his mid-teens, Assange, along with his mother and half-brother, finally settled down in Melbourne. His introduction to hacking started at 16 when he was given a Commodore 64, which he attached to a modem. He attended the University of Melbourne, where he studied programming, physics, and mathematics. He never graduated, but that doesn't mean he didn't get an education. By 1991, Assange hacked into the Pentagon, U.S. Navy, and other branches of the U.S. government. In 1996, he was caught by the Australian Federal Police and charged with over 30 counts of hacking and computer-related crimes. He didn't get any jail time, but he was fined $2,100.
I think the first taste of what would come later was the hacking that he did as a young programmer, and that really sort of foreshadowed a healthy skepticism of the use and abuse of technology by governments.
That's Vernon Silver.
I'm a reporter for Bloomberg's investigations team.
Assange's youth as a hacker laid the foundation for him to start WikiLeaks in 2006. But what is WikiLeaks? It's a website that posts unfiltered, usually classified documents. What separates it from every other media outlet is that they have no editorial hierarchy. With a publication like the New York Times, information comes in, they take that information, package it, then disseminate it for the public to see. WikiLeaks, however, cuts out the middleman.
WikiLeaks gathers information, most of it given to them anonymously. So what they're doing is really very simple. They get the information in one end from who gives it to them and out the other with sometimes minimal interference. Julian Assange is the leader of that, the mastermind, the creator, and really, because he thinks of it as a journalistic enterprise, the editor-in-chief.
But every story starts with a source, and Assange has some unconventional sources.
Julian Assange does not hack as far as we know. He is the recipient of people who are either insiders who give him secret documents or hacked emails from a foreign power.
That's Eli Lake.
I am a columnist for Bloomberg.
And there was no source bigger for Assange than Chelsea Manning. He used to be known as U.S. soldier Bradley Manning. In 2010, Manning provided Assange and WikiLeaks with hundreds of thousands of leaked government documents. WikiLeaks quietly began releasing the documents in February of 2010, then made big headlines in April by posting what is now known as the collateral murder video.
Come on, fire!
It was a vivid, graphic video. It changed the debate on the Iraq War, and importantly,